Hi there. In this lecture we see Karl Schlechter against Emanuel Lasker. Karl Schlechter was going to be a formidable opponent for World Championship challenges in later years, so this is an interesting early encounter between them in 1895 in the Hastings tournament, round 3. So it was in 1910 that they had a challenge match which Schlechter nearly kind of took the crown from Lasker. So a very strong player for the time. So e4 from Karl Schlechter, we see c5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, and now an accelerated kind of dragon g6. White takes on c6, which might not be the best test. This is a forcing move now, queen d4, and Lasker reacts with f6, which is cute. It's got a cute idea of knight h6 to f7, sure, and that the pawns in the centre should become a formidable force sometimes if not kept rather under lock and key. But knight f6 is a great move here because e5, knight d5, e6. Black can actually just retreat the knight here, and it doesn't matter so much about the king being inconvenienced because black is getting a nice central pawn majority and should be absolutely fine here. This is probably one of the better ways to play it. If f6 here, then this is just equal. So actually knight f6, if you ever play this line, this seems quite nice for black. But anyway, f6 was played. We have bishop c4, e6. White castles, knight h6. So this plan is in progress to get a knight to f7. Knight c3, knight f7. Cute plan. Bishop e3, bishop g7. Rook a d1. Black castles. So we can see actually that the knight does hold the queen and the rook holds the queen, which means bishop takes is not quite on. The queen is not that fragile right now because of the knight. It's doing quite a job. Queen d2, f5, e takes, g takes, and then bishop d4 is played. Perhaps it seems more accurate is to challenge this rook, it seems, and here f4 to try and keep a lock and key on black's pawns. So anyway, bishop d4 was played, d5, bishop takes g7. It seems black's position is easier to play here. Engines might like white, but it seems, black's got potential to roll the pawns forward quite simply. And that's exactly what Lasker does. He rolls the pawns forward. e5, knight a4, queen f6, knight c5, f4, f3. Notice how e3 has been weakened here. Bishop f5, bishop d3, rook a e8, rook e1, or rather rook d e1 to be more precise, rook e7, rook f2, and now knight d6. We see queen c3, bishop g6, rook f e2, rook f e8. Black's centre looks pretty formidable. Bishop takes. This does weaken the c4 square, and the knight has access to c4 sometimes. H takes, knight d3, and things get a bit nasty now after knight d3. But the thing is, things are already nasty here because even if it wasn't knight c4, there's other routes into e3. This e3 looks like one of those squares where you can get an octopus knight basically. If you get a knight to e3, it's like spreading its tentacles in all directions, like an octopus from e3, all of these squares from e3. And so this is a good strategic theme to try and get an octopus knight on e3. We see knight d3, knight c4, so it's really, really a juicy position now. And this en route protects the e5 pawn en route. I mean, other things fail anyway, tactically. If knight f5, yeah, just rook takes e5 here, and white's got control of e5 basically. So after knight d3, we see knight c4, so protecting e5, knight f2, and now this knight e3. This is just horrendous positionally. It's so much easier for black to play now with that entrenched knight. And this is how in later years, an entrenched knight was the downfall of Capablanca. If you get an entrenched knight like this, it's usually a good sign. Knight d1 and d4, queen d3. And now actually e4 is played, f takes, rook takes e4. White gives in to sort of give black a protected passed pawn. This looks extremely bad positionally for white. So rook f4 here, rook takes, queen d1, c5. And in fact, there's a kind of celebration of how good the position is coming up. After b3, a5. Yeah, I mean, b3, white doesn't want to be totally squished with c4 later. a5. Queen e1, a4. You know, saying, look, I don't mind playing c4. I don't mind sacking a pawn. You know, to get these two connected passed pawns in the center. We can see the mechanism, you know, of c4 and d3 later would be crushing. So queen a5. We see rook f8, threatening queen f1 checkmate. Queen goes back, rook f5, queen d1, and this is where things get entertaining. Lasker, for fun, just takes his king for a walk to the centre of the board. Basically showing that white's not up to much here. White's just tied down. Takes the king for a stroll to the centre of the board. And the queen centralises. It's showing domination of the position, flexing his muscles, showing absolute domination of the position. And the king goes back. I can't really give an explanation for this. Is this a psychological ploy to show that white's really tied down? Who knows? Queen e1, rook f6, queen d1, queen g3, queen d3, and now rook f2. Things get nasty here. This is very nasty. So threatening queen g2 mates, queen takes g2 mates. That's protected. But now queen f4. So threatening rook f1 mate. We have queen e7 check. The thing is, this is a lost rook and pawn ending on queen takes. This position here is lost. The protected passed pawns, protected part means that, you know, the rook's going to be tied down whilst black's rook's got free roam. You know, as an example, say white took here, this pawn could be rounded up. And we're back to the situation where squish is going to occur with king e4, c4 and d3, two protected passed pawns going to crash through. So anyway, queen e7 check, king h6, end of game. White resigned. There's a threat of rook f1 mating. If rook takes, then actually the queen is protecting f8 still and can support the queen with e2, the queening of that pawn. Yeah, so a fun game against Carl Schlechter, who was going to become a formidable force in later years. Apparently Schletter's too nice for his own good. Well, he was later in other matches. You know, a very powerful player, though. This was early in his own personal development. So he was a bit crushed in this game positioning by Lasker on this occasion at Hastings Round 3, 1895. Interesting historical game of historical importance in my view, and great positional play from Lasker. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks very much.